It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Wednesday, October 30th. Your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that loves a shutout in Boston.
Yeah, it was hard work.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. I've been podcasting about the Flyers, the NHL, and hockey for a decade. I'm here with prospect expert and Flyers credentialed reporter for 19 years, Russ Cohen. You can start the season big with a return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. To keep up with our latest info and Flyers news, you can find us at Locked On Flyers on all your socials, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Twitter. And of course, here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It's Mailbag Day, so we're going to get to your questions. We've got some questions after that game in Boston that we're going to get to, but before we get to that, we're going to break down that game of the hockey moms trip to Boston. Got to keep them around, right?
I mean, if they can. I mean, they'll be at the Halloween game for sure, so they'll be there for that.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I know we're going to talk about Sam Ersson because he had quite a game there getting the shutout. But Yegor Zavgarin had another win in the KHL with the big team, 6-0, 922 save percentage. He is waiting in the wings for sure.
Yeah, he's their goalie of the future, but he's 19. So we have to pump the brakes. He's not going to be over for a couple of years, and I don't know if he'll play in the NHL right away. You might see him at 21, 22, but 21's even a little early these days. But we'll see. He's quite the goalie.
Yeah, really excited about that. Of course, Bobby Brink checks back into the lineup. Nick Delorier is out finally. We talked about this for a couple days.
We did.
Sam Ersson gets the 24 save shutout, and I think that is a huge part of it, that he only had to face 24 shots. Now, there was some scrambling in front of the net that we saw. There were some dangerous
2 or 3
situations.
pileups. Oh, yeah. And then
So
almost kicked in goal. That was so close.
Oh, I really thought it had gone in at first.
I did too. And then you see the replay and you realize, okay, it's only on half the line. So
yeah. And then, I think there was a concerted team effort there defensively. I think they made some mistakes, but I do think it felt a little bit more cohesive defensively in this game than it had in some previous games.
Well, I mean, this is something I'm going to be a little critical here of the coaching staff because this is something where we said why Emil Andrae needed to play on the road trip. They were reluctant to do it. They didn't do it. Then they sent him back. And then now the only reason he gets in is because they're forced because of injury. And he was probably their second best defenseman in this game.
Yep.
And the reason
100%.
Yeah, and the reason they got through this game, I think, is because, he did show that he can be a little physical. He pinned a few guys against the boards, but he's able to get the puck out quick. He made power play look as good as it could look, but the forwards on it stink. They just have no idea what to do on the power play. 5-on-5, those guys are good, but they don't know what to do on that power play. And Andrae was just feeding them. He did take a shot, but he was doing everything you're supposed to do. So, we didn't oversell Emil Andrae. He had a real good game.
No, he was very feisty too, as we saw.
Yeah.
He can dish it out too. Which is good for a smaller guy. I think people are worried about that. And I don't think after this game, I would not be worried about him on that front at all. I think, the fact that they got one goal aside from the empty netter at the end. Obviously, it was a tough road to get a goal in this game. Korpisalo was playing very well.
He played great. I mean, considering he hadn't played in 13 days.
Yeah, but I think the Flyers had a tough time getting set up offensively.
They did.
They would have a pretty solid zone entry, but just then get tied up on the boards, lose the puck, and that would be that. And that was a pretty repetitive thing that happened throughout this game. The Bruins did a good job on that front.
They did, and they really frustrated Tippett. Like, Tippett's gotta learn
Mhm.
how to, he's not gonna get these rush opportunities every game or open shots at the net every game, and he's gonna have to figure this out. But they did frustrate him. They did, and, he's right now, he's struggling. But, yeah, the team defense was there, no question about it. You did see, some improvement, like Scott Lawton, other than scoring, improved. Again, why they kept Noah Cates out of the lineup, it never made sense because you could see it's a
Yeah,
massive difference with him in there.
yeah, let's talk about Noah Cates because what a game he
Oh,
had. And yeah, like for not getting on the scoreboard, he probably had like the best game out there of
yeah,
most of the forwards. Really strong defensive play was a huge part of that team-driven defense. But he did also activate offensively. He tried to set up several scoring
yeah.
chances for others that were really quality passes. And then, oh my God, when he used his skates to clear that puck in the key situation in the third period after a turnover, like what does he not do at this
I know.
point?
That's why when I saw fourth line left wing, I was like, come on, he's not gonna play that for long in this game, and he didn't.
No, no, and I think it's a credit to him that he just keeps
Yes.
showing up and he does what he's asked of,
Yeah.
and even if he sits, he'll come back in and
He's
put
a great
forth
team
a
player. He really
yeah,
is.
yeah. So love to see that. Love to see Tyson Forster get on the board after having sat a game last week, which was not great for him. So I think that was really good for him to show that he can have that scoring touch.
Yeah, I saw that improvement on that goal because when he got the puck, I think in the past he would have taken like an extra quarter of a second, half second to get set up on that with his feet. But he had his feet
Mhm.
ready, and that shot went off a little quicker than I think it went off last year. I don't have a timer. I'm not there like, the
Right.
guy at like a stopwatch at track. But yeah, I think that was just a little improvement over what we saw last year.
Yeah. I think so, and of course, the penalty kill, Bruins were 0 for 4 on their
Yeah.
power play. It was really, a difficult task, especially, when the Bruins got a 5-on-3.
Yep.
That that entire penalty kill was real solid,
Yeah, they
and
stepped up.
they really stepped up, and so, I think, like, yeah, maybe the defense struggled a little bit early, but then, Bruins only getting 3 shots on goal in the 3rd.
Only
Um,
because of the 28 block shots. Like,
yes. So that's where we're getting to next, right? So
yeah,
it's hard to nitpick this game because
right,
A, they won, and B, there were a lot of really good things. And this is the
right.
one thing that I would really nitpick in this game is that
Yeah.
28 block shots. Not only is it hard to depend on that consistently for a long time, guys are starting to get really worn down.
Yeah, you could see it. I mean, there's only so many times guys can go off in pain before they're gonna miss a few games. And the guys right now, they can't afford to miss any defensemen with Cam York
Right.
out. So I do think that number is a little too high. I do.
Yeah, and you looked at, especially, Jamie Drysdale was hurting real bad.
Yeah.
Travis Konechny looked like he was hurting real bad,
Yep.
and this is not the first time we've seen that from Konechny this
No.
season. Won't be the last. I mean, obviously, he's a tough guy, and he's just gonna get back out there and do what he has to do. That's who he is, but I think that, it's we gotta be careful that the Flyers aren't depending too much on block shots for their
Right.
defense.
I think the Flyers have learned a little bit from last year with like Couturier. Uh,
Mhm.
it's a few less minutes a game, but he's still playing a lot of high leverage stuff. And I still feel like maybe take it easy on him early in the game because you could see like if he gets a breakaway, he's just got no speed. Like they catch right up to him, but he
Right.
makes good plays and he's valuable to have in the lineup. But I still think while they're doing a better job, they could still play his minutes a little better.
Yeah. Sealer, had a ton of block shots as
Oh yeah,
well.
Yeah.
So, and we
And
know
Risto
he's
was good too. He was.
yeah. I mean, I'm just saying from keeping an eye on the block shot
Just block shots.
situation,
Yeah.
yeah, like Sealer is okay, but I think that we're going to talk about Risto a little bit in the next segment when we ask our questions. But we talked about Emil Andrae, we talk about Noah Cates. I think you know the only other thing that I would maybe mention, except for the fact that I do think they improved on it as the game went on, which was a good thing, is that the first line matchup up against the Bruins fourth line was not working, right?
No, it wasn't.
But they managed to work through that and
They did.
figure it out. And
Yeah.
I think that's something that was really impressive to me because we saw Mitchkov and Konechny and get chances and get more of them as the game went on.
Yeah, they handled Mitchkov a lot better than other teams have, though. Like they really
Yeah.
did. He wasn't that much of a factor in this one.
No, no, but it didn't matter in this style game.
No, but I mean, but that's the whole thing, though. You have to watch it because if they're playing this style of game, it's going to be hard for Mitchkov to kind of get it going. It's only when
Yeah.
he could play a little looser that he could really play his game. So there's going to be a juggling act with that.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, this game brought up some key questions for us that we are going to get into coming up next. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. Join over 10 million users and sign up today. PrizePicks is the best way to win real money this football season. Which players are going off, which players aren't. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn those sports opinions into real money all season long on PrizePicks. You can win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. PrizePicks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out even if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. And PrizePicks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as little as 15 minutes. So download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNHL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, on tomorrow's show, we are going to preview the Halloween game against the St. Louis Blues with our pal Haley Simon,
That'll be fun.
host of Locked On Blues. Always fun to talk to her since she covers the Flyers as well. So really nice balanced perspective there. Looking
Yes.
forward to it. So getting into our questions we have after this game, I mentioned we were going to talk about Ristolainen, and the pairing with Sanheim and Risto is working really well, I would say. And they're kind of building from game to game, I would say, and getting better and better. So the question is, when Cam York comes back, does Risto keep that top pairing spot?
I mean, right now I might keep it. I think it's good, especially when they match up against bigger teams, because the Flyers sometimes lose the physical battles. But with those two, you got two really big defensemen. It's kind of
Yeah.
working.
Yeah, I really like it, and I wasn't sure because I wasn't sure what kind of Risto we were gonna get and if it was gonna hamper Sanheim's game, but that has not
No.
occurred. And Sanheim, as we saw, got 2 goals in the last game, and the pairing, I think, worked pretty well in this game against the Bruins. So I think it'll be interesting where they put Cam York in. I think obviously when guys come back from injury, it does make sense to drop them down a pairing or two
Right.
anyway, just to limit their minutes. So it'll be a good chance for them to test out maybe a different spot for him.
Yeah, I agree.
So the other thing that we talked about with this game, how do they get more organized offensively to get quality chances against a physical team like this? Because, we've talked about them needing to get net front chances, and they did not in this game really
No,
very much at all.
I think first thing is I think a lot of times I like when one guy can bring the puck up, but when you're playing a physical team that's looking to disrupt, you got to make 2 or 3 passes to kind of get into the offensive zone. And then at that point, hopefully have somebody set up in the corners. Sometimes you should go behind the net because when things get
Mhm.
really physical, a lot of times you could lose guys behind the net. And I feel like other than Mitchkov, nobody really does that.
Yeah, I mean, Frost will do it, I
A
think,
little.
but I do think they could benefit from more of that, and that would help their net front presence.
Yeah.
And I think that
Because if you
that
have
is
a
an
guy behind the
absolutely
net,
fair
you have
point.
to go to net to get the puck. Like it's inevitable.
Right. Right. And then I think from the defensive side of things, even though I think they did play well defensively
Hmm.
overall in this game, if you just kind of look at patterns and the first period in particular of this game, I noticed that they're collapsing a little bit more than they should, versus, last year they were a lot more challenging, a lot more aggressive. But what do we think changed in this game to really make it work versus in the past where, the past few games where they've just kind of collapsed and haven't been able to work well defensively?
I think they just battled harder. I think this team just battled harder. And I think there was a full team defense effort, not
Mhm.
just defense. But we do have to point out that I think it was the second period. They were pinned in their zone for a while.
They
Like
were.
that was like the old John Tortorella way of playing, like playing my in your own zone as long as you don't
And
get
blocking
scored
shots.
on and blocking shots. That was like old Torts, right? Which he had sort of gotten
Yeah.
away from, but it didn't stay that way the whole time, so it's fine.
Right, and that's the key part of it, right? Is that it didn't stay that way, and
Right.
that they did, in the 3rd period, I think, switch it up enough.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, they had to block a ton of shots at the very end
Oh,
with the
yeah.
empty net situation, but I think, for the most part, at 5-on-5, they did a much better job in that
Yes.
3rd period, and I think they can learn a lot from this game in terms of, even when you're dealing with a slightly less physical team than this, you're still going to be able to have a more cohesive defense, like they did in this one.
But the Blues have
Um,
big guys too, so they're this playing
they
this
are,
way will carry over well for the Blues
yeah,
because they're big too on defense.
yeah, I would say so. I would absolutely say so. One of the other observations that I had about this game, is that the fourth line. Now we talked about Noah Cates being a huge part of it, but he and Ryan Poehling, Garnet Hathaway, right? So Poehling and Hathaway had the most unblocked shot attempts in the game right up until the very end in that flurry when Coots and Farabee caught up and in the empty net situation. But I think that it was really interesting that it was Poehling and Hathaway that had the most unblocked shot attempts.
Yeah, Paling's struggling though, like he is.
I know.
He's not the same guy right now as we saw last year. That's pretty evident. So I don't know what's gonna have him not struggle. I'm not sure, but yeah, he's got 4 assists. So and in this one, he had some opportunities that I felt like he couldn't cash in on. So
Right.
yeah, that's something. Hathaway, look, I don't really look for points from Hathaway. I know you get them occasionally, but I don't look for them.
Right. I just think it was credit to the Bruins, like we talked about, Mitchkov and Konecny didn't really
Yes.
get going, right? And you would
Hmm.
expect those 2 to have the highest number in those stats or even Owen Tippett, right?
Right.
But it was Poehling and Hathaway because they got, like, the more favorable matchups, in my
Right.
opinion, and so they were able to get those shots off, in the, bulk of the game there. So, a really interesting aspect to the game. One sort of silly question that I have, is Mitchkov ever gonna actually convert on the Michigan here?
Well, I mean,
Because he's trying.
Yeah,
He's trying.
Torts is at least letting him do it. So that's an
Yeah,
improvement over what he said, a couple of years ago. I think at some point he might, but teams are wise to it, obviously. So the
yeah.
best thing that could happen is if he goes for it and at least somebody could get a rebound out of it. Then that would be fine.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's really the best option there is to have it create a rebound attempt
Right.
that's net front, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And that's really what we're looking for here, and that's why we want that behind the net play
Right. Right.
from the Flyers. So yeah, I for his sake, I hope he gets one at some point this season.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, those were our questions after this game. Y'all have some really good questions coming out of the mailbag and in the YouTube comments. We're going to get to those coming up next.
Get ready to tackle NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get 150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out all the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. I still say take the Texans over the Jets. Just visit fanduel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's fanduel.com.
All right, diving into your mailbag questions. Brendan emailed us about this team defense issue. And he says there's been too much soft back checking by the forwards. I'm not saying size is the answer, but Drysdale and York get pushed around. Sean Walker made the group better because he allowed other players to play to their talents more. They need another defenseman like that. And it doesn't have to be skating or puck moving. It could be the stalwart defenseman who allows the others to play more freely. Like, what would you say to that?
I would
Russ?
say you're going to have to be patient, but in another year or two, you'll have Oliver Bonk to do that. And I think
Hmm.
he'll add that dynamic to the team, and he's close. So he's a few away, I think. So yeah, I think other than that, uh, you probably, to be fair, you probably could have gotten that guy in this offseason, but you got Eric Johnson. He's not that guy.
Right. And I think that they couldn't afford that guy this year.
Well, it
I think,
depends. I mean, sometimes you could afford that guy, depending. Uh, it's never going to be someone great, but it could be someone that could do it for 10 minutes in a game. That's all I'm saying.
yeah. And I think we saw a little bit of the soft back checking problem solved in this
Yeah,
Bruins game for sure. But I think that that was happening earlier, that we had talked about the forwards not engaging defensively
true.
enough.
It's helped
But
with Cates in there too. We got to be
Mhm.
honest.
Yeah, it's helped with Cates in there, but I do think it's gotten better overall. I think
Yes.
Couturier has gotten better at it
Yeah.
over the past week or so as well. So I'm very hopeful that
I mean,
that
Frost
trend
tried. He
will
got that
continue.
penalty, but at least he tried.
Yeah, yeah, he got a gold star for that one. Michael's 2502 says, so many people assume the team had pivoted from rebuild mode to win mode because Mitchkov came over. But what is your understanding of what Danny Jones, Torts, and Hilferty are saying behind the scenes with the amount of 2025 draft capital on hand? I always saw this season as another basement dwelling season.
Yeah, I think you're mostly right. I think Dan's just going to root for the team. Like Dan doesn't
Yeah.
talk about any of those other things. He wants to win every game, but he understands what's going on, but he still wants to win. And he just every
Mhm.
period he's down and he's up, and I talk to him all the time. So that's what I see out of Dan. Uh,
Well, Hilferty, you're saying.
Hilferty, Dan
Yes.
Hilferty. Well, I said Hilferty at the
Yeah.
beginning, but yes, Dan Hilferty. And Keith Jones doesn't want to use the word rebuild because I think he just doesn't want to admit it. Danny admits it, so he understands. So I don't think fans should be upset if they do take a step back from last year, because last year just everything seemed to work, everything seemed to click. Calgary seems to be that team in the NHL this year where we had low expectations, and so far they're gangbusters out of the gate. It happens, but if you looked at the changes that were made this year, guys they lost, uh, you kind of knew they weren't going to be able to be that same team. So a lot of things were going to have to break the right way to be able to do the same thing as last year.
Yeah, and this year is a lot about integrating Mitchkov and
Yes.
getting him NHL
Yeah.
ready, right? Like,
Yeah. And if
about
they get
his
him and
adjustment to
Andre
the NHL.
integrated, that's a big
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah, huge deal. Absolutely huge deal. And I think, like, as the season progresses, they're gonna contribute more and more
Yep.
to the Flyers and maybe steal us a couple wins there. So I think that is a really important aspect of it. Carl Hamill says, we hear that Kolosov would wait until around the end of October to decide if he was okay staying with the Phantoms and Flyers or go back to Minsk. This is likely why the Flyers gave him a game in the NHL in the hopes that it motivates him to stay and work on improving here. Is that what happened and why he got that game?
Yeah, there's no question. Something pretty close to that is what happened. I don't know if he's going to tell him exactly at the end of October because we're kind of there now. I think the Flyers would hold on to 3 goalies for a little while to kind of, let him get some NHL pay because that makes a big deal,
Mhm.
to get NHL money. So I think they could do that for, another 3-4 days before they make a decision, and at least he'll get paid. And then it's up to him. I can't tell you which way he's leaning. Nobody knows.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not sure exactly if and when he'll get the next game in with the Phantoms, just because the Phantom schedule is weird this week,
Right.
so I think they can get away with not using him this week.
Yeah.
But the following week, that may be a question where they're gonna wanna have him there if he's not gonna play
Makes
for the
sense.
Flyers. So I would look toward that week for them to make the next sort of decision about what to do with Kolosov. Robert Kirshner asks, Russ, with all the information you gain on a player, it sounds like you have in depth information on many players. Do you have organizations using you as a resource?
Yeah, will see other scouts from other teams at tournaments, and they'll ask me who do I like, and they'll trade some information with me on some players and such. So yeah, there's a little bit of that goes on.
Yeah, I think it's really cool when, like, what you do at different tournaments and how you approach them. I think, we talked about that last week in our kind of draft kickoff episode where we talked about your process a little bit and just kind of like how you talk to players, how you talk to players about other players. And so it gives you like a fuller picture. So I think it would make sense that people would come to you for your evaluation, right?
Yeah, I mean, and it's not a lot, but it's just, because I was on Hockey Prospect Radio, a lot of scouts and even like AGMs, people like that, some GMs, that's a smaller amount, will chat with me and, converse about players because of that, because, we had done that for a lot of years.
Yeah. Chris Barrie wants to know about the Reading Royals because now that we kind of know how the season will go for the Flyers, although I don't know that we do, Chris. Um, so who stands out on the Royals? Hopefully, someone can move up to Lehigh Valley. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Chris, for the compliment. Very much appreciate it. The Royals are a tough organization to really cover just because like the way that the Phantoms and Royals like relate to each other, like those call ups generally are only in case of emergency.
Right. There's not a
And
lot of guys, like for all the Jonathan Quick talk, like he was in the ECHL and he made it to the
yeah,
NHL. It's not a lot of guys. It's more goalies
yeah,
than position players too, right? Position players. I'm watching the
right.
World Series than just other players.
Yeah, so I really think it's just the goalies because that's
Yeah,
kind of where your organizational depth goes all the way down to the ECHL. Yeah,
right.
I think, obviously we had that Max Wellman story a couple of years
Yes.
ago, or it's more than a couple of years ago now. It's like
Yeah,
several
Matt
years ago
Brown's
now.
up with at least
Matt,
with the Phantoms. He was down there,
right. Right. So
but it's not a
there's
lot.
some there's sometimes stories like that, that guys get chances, but the Phantoms have so many players and you have like, 6 to 8 scratches a game. Like you need to get all those players in before you really think about,
Right.
calling up guys from the Royals. So we'll see if anybody pops though. I think it's always fun when it happens.
Yeah, I remember I went to the ECHL All-Star game once in Reading, and it was fun. Can't remember if any of those players ever made it in the league. I should go back and look at that. Be
Yeah.
curious.
Yeah. I'm actually genuinely curious how the ECHL team in Salt Lake City is doing now that there's an NHL team there
Yeah,
too.
yeah, yeah.
They play at about like I'd say like 20 minutes apart from each other right now in Utah, and that ECHL team isn't the affiliate of the Utah team.
No,
they're with
no.
they're with the Ducks. So
Yeah.
what are you gonna do? Anyway, that will do it for today's show. Thanks for making us your first listen today. Like I said, tomorrow we are going to preview the next Flyers game against the St. Louis Blues with Haley Simon. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you. So if you've got those mailbag questions or Flyers thoughts, let us know on any of our socials at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com or comment on our YouTube channel. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen today. For your next listen, find Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a great day, everyone.